Great. Well, first of all, thank you to CineVino. We're really happy to be here. So, we're the cast and crew of Harvest Season, so a documentary that's just premiered at DOC NYC, and we've got a beautiful bottle of something that I've never had before. So, Andrea has much better pronunciation than I do, so she's going to tell us what we're drinking.
So we're drinking a bottle of Château de Peyral, which is a mix of Merlot and Cabernet. And we'll try it out. See.
Yeah, let's see. So I'm going to pour then a little. So it's early afternoon. We typically don't drink this early in the afternoon, especially when we're working, but
we'll make an exception.
We'll make an exception. So I'll just, as we're pouring, I feel like Orson Welles, like late stage Orson Welles here when he was really drunk. I'll just start off just by explaining a little bit about the film. So the film Harvest Season it's basically a story about all of the people who make wine in California, but who you never normally hear about. So, and that means really the immigrant workers, the small producers, and the small growers, like Vanessa Robledo. So Vanessa comes from a really prominent winemaking family, the Robledos, that have been in Napa and Sonoma for generations. And so when I first met her and her mother, I was really intrigued by their story, in part because there's so many great films out there about wine, but I've never seen a film about wine that talks about the contributions and the participation of Mexican and Mexican-American makers. So for me, it felt like a really unique opportunity. So many of the films that I've made have been about the US and Mexico. And so I felt like, wow, Vanessa's story, her mother's story, the story of the other winemakers, that this is a real opportunity to share this really unique history with audiences. So for me, it was just a real pleasure to be able to work with Vanessa and Andrea, our associate producer, with the excellent French pronunciation. Let's do a little cheers. to the film here. Salud.
Salud.
And thank you to CineVino for the invitation. What do you think? Oh, it's good.
It's beautiful. Nice.
So, Vanessa, what's one of the more popular reds in the Robledo family wines that, I've had a bunch of them. I really love the Braceros blend. But there's actually a bottle with your photograph on it, right? Will you tell us about that one?
Sure. That's a series that we have at the family winery, and it's a Cabernet from Napa Valley. So there's 9 children in the family, and all of us were honored on a label. So 2007 happened to be my vintage. And so they had a photo of me on the label, and about 100 cases are produced of this wine, so they're very rare production, and the family keeps a library of those wines and then sells the rest of it. And so it really expresses what, not only the story for each child, but expresses the characteristics of what was produced because even though it's harvested from the same vineyards, it doesn't mean that the characteristics are the same. Every vintage is different. So that's what makes that wine special. Just like all the 9 children are different, so are each vintage wines.
Yeah. There's also, your family is known for making these really beautiful Chardonnays. So in the film, there's this sequence that I love of you and your mother preparing chile rellenos. It's really your mom doing this.
Yeah, my mom.
But she's making these incredible chile rellenos, and I think that's one of the things we've talked about, is that a lot of wine people don't necessarily understand that traditional Mexican cuisine pairs so beautifully with wine. You just need to have the right type of wine to pair with Mexican food.
Yeah, I think that's really why I'm so proud of being here in New York, because this was the first market that embraced that. And a lot of the Latin restaurants in California were not open to pairing Latin food and wine. They were telling me no tequila or beer. But here in New York, they really embraced our brand and began pairing, like for example, the example that you gave with the chile rellenos and the Chardonnay. Because of the Chardonnay's acidity, it just balances that spice. And even though it's pretty mild spice in the chile relleno, it still really creates a beautiful mouthfeel and also balance in the dishes that you're having, because that's what wine is. It's food, so it should be treated as that, and it can pair with any dish in the world. And wines can be paired with any dishes in the world. It just depends on the variety, the characteristics of the wine, the acidity, and being able to balance the fruit, the food flavors. So.
Yeah. And I love that in the process. I mean, I think like anybody who really cares about food and wine should be excited by that it's an opportunity to kind of expand like the palate and find new things. I mean, even in Sonoma, I would bring a bottle of Gustavo's Cabernet. He has a beautiful Cabernet, Atlas Peak Cabernet from 2012. I would bring that to Tortilleria Jalisco. So I'd have some tacos, I would have some carne asada or some like kind of like a meat, like a strong flavor, meat tacos with his Cabernet. And it was like a very rich, like heavy meal. So I think like from a food standpoint, it's an opportunity to do interesting things. Andrea, I never asked you this, but did you grow up drinking wine at home at all in Mexico?
Kind of, I sort of did. Like my father was always very interested in food and wine, and so I tried a lot when I was younger. And I think it was like my teenage years when I actually like started drinking like full glass of wine with the meals. My dad is a very good chef, so he likes to make a lot of French dishes back in Mexico. So it was interesting to try. Yeah, I do enjoy wine and grew up kind of like learning the different.
Yeah. French and Mexican cuisine, I actually think go very well together. There's some really beautiful combinations there. And funnily enough, like here in New York, some of the great French restaurants, they're all staffed by Mexican chefs and wine cooks that are like learned in Puebla, or, and some other places. So I think that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Well, here's another. It's a really beautiful wine. I never had it before.